Yo guys, before we get into today's video, have you ever wanted to get your own custom piece of artwork, something to fill those spaces on the wall that you just can't seem to fill? Well, look no further. All you have to do is click the link for @CarlSerif over on Twitter. He does requests, custom orders and international shipping. All communication is done through Carl, so you have nothing to worry about in terms of customer care. You can, however, get at him on Discord, in my Discord that is, just at Carl in my Discord. And you can go straight to DMs via that way. So if you want one of these amazing pieces of art or any other custom piece you can think of, just at CarlSerif. Let's get into the video. Yo guys, welcome back to another Danmachi Memoria Freese video. Okay, so it's been a week, or it's been just over a week, maybe just over a week, I don't know. I lost track of time, I got sick, but basically Monday's coming up and I've already done all of the in-game content thus far, so it's time to drop another tier list for another element, and we're moving on to the light element tier list. So in saying that, this is the part where I show you the tier list and you basically just skip the video. No, I'm joking, stick around. By all means, if you don't want to stick around and you're just here for the tier list, I will put it up on the screen right now. You can have a look, take your pick, criticize me all you want. These are opinion based, sort of. And then if you are interested in why I made the decisions I made, stick around and I can explain why I made these decisions. If I can find the layer in OBS. Okay, here we are. So this is the light tier list. Now, I should explain some things before we get into it. This tier list operates on the assumption that these units are all at the maximum they can be. So some units do not have max hero ascension anyway, but this assumes all of these units, the scores that they were given based on the scaling system that me and the reliable old school players in my Discord came up with, have ranked these pieces. So yes, it does assume that all of these units are at their max potential when scored. And keep in mind, this is a comparative within the element. So we are not comparing units to those of other elements. So for example, we can't take one unit here and say, oh, well, they're not good because we have this unit, in a different element. That's not how this tier list works. This tier list is solely for light, and it's leaning in favor of war games because it's exceptionally hard to make a tier list that converges all game modes. So given that there are more game modes outside of Wargame than there are game modes for Wargame, we went in favor of away from Wargame. Sorry, stumbling my words. But saying that, let's get into the tier list. I'm going to completely ignore the D tier. There are some questionable results in there, and I will explain them real quick. So some of you might be thinking, oh, why is Shido and Tokar and Artemis in here? Now, even the Line. Now, I should say that they are like very high D tier, almost close to C tier. They just fell shy because the utility that they offer, or the damage that they offer along with said utility, doesn't warrant them being in C tier. How the scaling system that I came up with works is that you have to, as the tiers go up, the level or caliber of utility, damage, stats, etc., and all of the measuring system, well, not system, all of the measuring statistics that I use to scale these units in comparison should go up the higher the tier you get. There are certain exceptions, and I will go over those after, but in D tier, the units that I will say are very close to jumping up to C tier, they just lack that little bit, are Shido, Tokar, Artemis, and even the general pool, I say general pool, the other Line, because she does provide that SA gauge charge, but just nothing else. There is nothing else. Moving into C tier, we are I'm not gonna, I know it's a welfare unit, but I'm not gonna stop singing its praises. The new Armid that's out is so amazing. If you do not have Haruhime, she just doesn't extend debuffs and she doesn't apply a strength and magic buff on her SA, but she's still so good. She provides so much utility. She lacks a lot of stats and she basically does no damage, but she provides so much utility so much mid tier, we'll say mid tier utility, that it's impossible for me to put her lower than C tier. That's just how it's got to be. The other questionable one in this C tier is the Chloe Lolo. She is here simply because her SA gives minus 50% light resist. Now, I'm just going to confirm this real quick because I do have them all here ready to go. So there we go. We'll look at them. We'll look at the whole thing just so you know, right? Her strength stat is really good. Very close to triple S. Nothing really much wrong with her other stats, although it's just self-strength 80%, really good. Single target, but then there's no super modifiers here to speak of to sort of take advantage of that. There's no additional multipliers to make her skills sort of pack more punch than they usually would. The only real massive thing here is the light resist minus 50%, and having a welfare unit that extends buffs now means even though that is one turn, it can still always be extended by at least 2 additional turns with using the armored. So it kind of brings her value up to D tier just about. In saying that, I didn't want to put her any higher because it is still, the rest of her kit's still pretty useless, and you're only really bringing her with a sack, which means it gets a little bit more complicated to try and fit her in or form the rotations to make your team work beyond that. So let's close this back down and go back to the tier list. Everything else, Origami still sits above the others, mainly because of all of the utility she provides herself. She's not really, I think she will fall off, or if not, is falling off rather quickly. In fact, it may be questionable as to whether I should have just dropped her down to D tier. I will have to go and look at her another time, but I don't, if she is D tier, I will be revamping and re-going over these tier lists every time new units to that element come out anyway, so we'll see. Bet does amazing damage, but provides no utility for his team to speak of, so much out here just for his damage. Still good damage, that's about it. So let's just jump up to the B tier now. The B tier, okay, we're 6 minutes into this video if I haven't trimmed any out, but we're in the B tier. I needed to get here quick because, as you can see, there is actually quite a lot of units in this B tier, and I know people are going to be screaming at me like, oh my god, why did you put Althea in B tier? Now the problem with this is obviously because we're leaning away from Wargame, which means a lot of her kit is not helpful. Nullifying attacks, not, you know, I mean, she does hit hard, and as if I recall correctly, or if my information is correct, I've been told that her single target damage leaves a lot to be desired, but she still has she still does do a lot of damage and does have a lot of utility in her kit, which is why she's sitting firmly at B tier. Nowhere near, like, she's leaps above the others in terms of utility and damage, like in this B tier. And I apologize if you can hear that plane flying over, so I will wait a second. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Althea just so I can justify my choices here. Keep in mind, guys, you are free to disagree with me. Drop in the comments, tell me if you disagree with my opinion. Keep it respectful. This is just opinion, and we're all here to just have a little bit of fun and maybe help out those people that don't really understand what units do what within the game just yet. So let's look. Her stats, amazing. For a magic unit, amazing. Her SA, however, now it hits hard as an AoE, so for those AoE 7th zones and Familiar Rush, fantastic. Record Buster, you don't want to do it. But the additional effect on there is it nullifies magic attacks. Completely useless. Her skill 1, magic agility plus 70%. Now for PvE, we'll say for PvE, the agility is not really worth much. But a 70% self magic buff, always amazing, always amazing. Plus the additional free actions, but those free actions, okay, so those free actions are the 75% chance to nullify a magic attack. This is where it comes out a little bit. This is what's bringing her down. We don't want to nullify it, because if you nullify an attack, you can't counter attack, so we lose a lot of damage from it. For skill 2, a light buff by 35% and a light resist debuff by 40% for foes and allies. Fantastic. That alone is enough to at least jump her up to the top of C tier, if not just at the rear end of B tier, because that buff is one, even if you have one copy of her, she becomes the ultimate light sack unit. Okay, and then finally her skill 3 has an additional damage modifier on her based on self magic buffs. Now, like I have been told that her single target damage isn't really that great, and other than that, she doesn't really have any super modifiers to speak of. Her additionals are nullification, so that's basically summarizes my reasons for keeping her in B tier. We're going to go back to the tier list now. There we go. Alright, so we're back on the tier list. So I messed with my layers for a second there. Okay, so all of the other units within B tier, you will notice, provide essential utility, great damage, and that, I mean, there is nothing else to it. Like I said, and they fit within, they work well within mono light teams. For example, the Tione, I always mix them up, but the SA gauge charge by 100%, that is such a strong thing to have, because if you leave her last unit and then still use, say, the Pop Star Line, you don't miss out on the SA gauge charge. In fact, you amplify the amount of SA gauge charge you would have, you know, compared to usual if you didn't have that. Finn with the physical resist and light resist debuff will fit into any physical light team, no problem, and he has a good amount of damage, plus an additional single target modifier, if I'm correct, on his skill 3. I'm going to actually look to make sure that I'm right here, because I want to avoid giving out misinfo. So there's the physical resist and light resist debuff, and yeah, he does have a 30% additional damage modifier per self strength buff with an ultra crit, so he's going to hit, he's going to pack a punch. And the others are exactly the same. Now, I did debate with the guys over my Discord whether Anarchy should be B tier or A tier, but due to lack of testing on my part, I don't have her MLB'd or anything like that. So if she did more damage, or if anyone out there can tell me exactly in comparison who she does damage on the same level as, it will really affect where she sits on this list, and I can change it for next time. So if you guys know more than me, but based on her current damage that I'm aware of, or that's written, and her utility, a clean B tier for sure. If I can get confirmation on her damage, I will bring it up to A tier. Speaking of, we're going to get into the A tier right now, and I know a lot of you guys are going to kill me for this one as well. Zard. Zard, why is Zard in A tier? You know what? The best thing for me to do is probably just go through him. Oi oi. Go through his stats. So, his stats and his skills, so to speak. So, triple S strength, cannot deny that. That dex stat is crazy. Crazy. Now, if you hadn't noticed though, before we get into the skills, units that are designed for war games generally are not going to reach those top tiers in terms of PvE content, with a few exceptions here and there. Let's go into the skills. Now, his SA, 50% damage for each self-strength buff. It is an AoE, which means it's not going to have as high a damage modifier as someone using a single target SA, or Record Buster and things like that, but it will work for AoE, 7th zones, and Familiar Rush. The physical resist and magic resist minus 50% debuff. That is fantastic. Fantastic. There are not, I don't think every mono element has a 50% resistance for physical and magic resist on them, whether it be a regular skill or an SA. We'll move on to skill 1, AoE. The taunt is what brings hit. The taunt is what brings his value down a little bit, because in PvE the taunt's really not going to do much for you, especially at 30% anyway. And the self 2 actions, low light physical attack with a HP heal of 20% of the damage. Now that's great. It means he's going to be self-sustaining, which means you won't have to heal him as much, which means he'll probably be, if you get into trouble with a mono light team, he's probably going to be your last man standing anyway. Skill 2, another AoE skill with a higher modifier, so he does have a super modifier, which means his damage is going to be exceptional. Skill 2, high modifier, high penetration, stealth strength and dex plus 70%. Now, he really did not need the 70% dex, but that means he's always going to crit, he's always going to pen, he's always going to counter. And the physical resist and magic resist minus 30%. A buff and a debuff in one is crazy, especially when he's setting himself up to utterly destroy people. And then the single target highlight physical attack with the additional 40% modifier for strength. Now, the problem here is his SA is an AoE, which brings that value down. He also has the 30% form, which brings him down as well. And we're looking for that S tier. We're looking for exceptional. Now he is on the border of exceptional, but we're looking for that exceptional stuff. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually, you know what, I did all of that and I didn't have him on the screen. I'm sorry, I didn't remove the tier list, but I read through it, so you should have followed along. Hopefully we're professionals, don't worry about it. But now we're going to look at the Line. Now Line is a special circumstance. Now I say that because he does give 33% SA gauge charge, but she gives let me just check. Actually, I don't want to misinform you, so I am going to double check before I say anything that might be incorrect here. But I'm going to check. I know you guys can't see. Okay, so she does give 33% SA gauge charge as well as counter and counter, crit and pen plus 20%. Now it's not the highest buff, but those are some of the best buffs, like counter, crit and pen. Amazing buffs to have on one unit, all in one skill. As a sack unit alone, that puts her up there in terms of value. She does have a super modifier skill. Her damage really isn't amazing, and she's not really gonna be fantastic for anything else. But the difference here is her passive on her counter is crazy. The ability to extend buffs for your entire team whenever you counter, that alone I think warrants her being in this A tier. Now don't get me wrong, these lists are not in order from left to right, so her being in front of Zard means nothing, okay? Now finally, before this video gets way too long, because it already has, we are looking at Lena. Now what I'm going to do for these last ones here is I'm actually just going to show you, and now I don't have Lena, I skipped for good reason, mainly because I'm now free to play and I'm saving for all of the banners to come. Her SA alone, the magic damage plus 80% for every magic buff, and in light resist minus 50%. She's going to hit so hard with her SA. And skill 1, magic, dex, light attack plus 60%, additional actions, high crit rate, skill 2, minus magic resist and light resist, 35%, crazy. And then her skill 3 is basically, imagine Aisha, but like, I think she hits harder than Aisha, but I don't have her, so I can't test that. But obviously she's always going to hit last because of the slow modifier, because she does do magic damage. Light magic attack damage plus 80% for every self magic buff, excluding assist skills. Sorry, the wording always throws me off. Buffs will be removed afterwards, so you have to constantly reapply her buff. But this is one of those scenarios where she's S tier because she's going to do so much damage that it doesn't matter that I won't say she provides utility. She provides excellent utility, like minus 35% magic resist and light resist. Given who else is in the S tier for light and you have them both, if there was a double S tier for combos, they would pair up amazingly. All right, now we're going to move on to the next unit in the S tier, which is the Haruhime. Like I said, we're going to go over them, buff them up real quick, get real nice with it. That's before we rush off. Magic stat, not as high as some others. So if you come over to her skills right here, Ultralight magic deck, the 80% additional modifier for every magic buff again, allies 40% HP regen, and light damage plus 80% for 3 turns, giving people an 80% light buff on her SA is crazy, especially considering she gets an 80% buff per self buff anyway, so her SA is still going to hit exceptionally hard given its single target, so its damage modifier is higher than that of any AoE counterpart. Sorry. Skill 1, self-buffing Dex, Light and Magic, Dex and Light attack damage by 60% and buffing allies by 30%. Now it is just magic, but to given, you know what that does? You know what that does? It allows you to put her into a mixed element magic team. Now obviously other elements don't come into it, but it increases her value based on the fact that how easily she can fit into other teams that are not light types. And then skill 2 removes strength, magic and agility buffs, excluding assist skills, and damage received from single target attacks plus 20%. So she increases single target attacks on enemies by 20%. That's an amazing utility skill to have, which is one of the reasons Anna Kitty is in B tier, or is it A tier? I can't remember. Anyway, it's the question mark in that. It's one of the utility fit reasons that Anna Kitty is tiered where she is. And then finally, skill 3, super light magic attack with the 40% modifier for every magic buff, and allies get 20% regen. She's going to hit really, really hard. If you have her already, you can attest to this. She also has an amazing amount of fundamental, and I say fundamental and essential utility for a mono light team, especially in Record Buster. Now, I don't need to go back to the tier list. You guys are already aware the final unit on that list, the god of single target light damage, is Anya. Now, almost a triple S stat, but that really doesn't matter. Nothing, it doesn't hold her back at all. If you come in here, the SA 60% modifier for every strength buff. She buffs her own strength and light damage by 90%. 90%, crazy. Skill 1, it is just herself. It's not allies. It is just herself. But she is a solo nuke, and the reason that matters is because she basically, with her kit, fits into any team, whether it be light or another element, for any reason. Allies 30% HP regen, self strength and light damage plus 60%. That's a crazy buff to have on itself. Skill 2, mid light, physical attack, physical resist and light resist minus 30%. So additional utility on top of everything else, and because it's a two-way debuff, that's what allows her to fit into any team, because she buffs her own strength and light damage, and she debuffs her own physical, like she debuffs the enemy's physical resist and light resist, which means she needs no one else. She is self-sufficient. And then finally, her super light physical attack, high critical rate, removes strength and magic buffs on skill 3. So much utility, so much damage, so much synchronicity within any team. There is no reason for her not to be in S tier. Anyway guys, that has been my tier list video. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Please make sure to drop a like if you did, subscribe if you're not. Social media links in the description as always. If you do have any opinions on the tier list, everything is up for discussion. That's how we grow, that's how we learn. Please keep it civil. But as always guys, love you, and I'll catch you later.